Hey everyone, Dylan here of Harmonic Design. I've been wanting to kind of work on this project for the last couple of years, and it's basically building a fully fledged, complete, robust game using nothing but HTML, CSS, Vanilla JavaScript. Just from the ground up, we can build it as a PWA, which stands for Progressive Web App, which basically means that once you upload it to your website or server, whatever, when someone goes to it, they can actually install it to their phone right then and there as pretty much a native web app. Or you could even package it up as an APK and upload it to the Google Play Store, and people can download it just like normal. So it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, to build a project like this. So the inspiration for this project is an old Flash game called, I'm pretty sure it's called Defend Your Castle or something to that extent. And I used to play it a lot in high school, and the premise is basically you have your castle on one side, and then stick figures, enemies, will walk across and attack the castle. You defend the castle by basically clicking and dragging the enemy up, dropping them, and as long as they drop from enough height, they'll die. And that's how you defend your castle. And it was a fun game actually, but especially with a mouse, you kind of get like carpal tunnel, just flicking and do that for 20 minutes, you feel it. And it's the kind of game that I always thought would translate extremely well to the modern touchscreen era. Instead of having to use a mouse cursor, which is not the best for that type of stuff, you can actually just use your finger for it on your phone. Much better. So that's basically the inspiration that we're going to be using to build off of. That's the we're going to be building the kind of spiritual successor to that today. So with that, let's jump in. So I haven't coded this yet, but I have thought about the way I want to actually set it up and build it. And what I decided on is we're actually going to use emojis. And the reason we're using emojis is basically because designing and creating game assets is incredibly difficult and time consuming. I mean, game asset developers, I just don't think they get enough credit that they deserve. The work they do is so skilled and time consuming and tedious, and it makes such a huge difference in any kind of game. But I'm lazy and I do not have the patience, or to be honest, even the skills to do something like that. So we're going to be basically using emojis as the enemy. So we're going to have attacking waves of emojis. And the reason for that is emojis are free, they're open source, they're cross-device compatible, and there's such a large array of different emojis that we have a big pool of designs to choose from. So plus it's like a recognizable brand. I don't really know if that's the right term for it. So we're going to use emojis as the enemies as a shorthand. I was going to say like I might end up designing my own actual, but you know what? The final product will probably end up with emojis as well. So I created a new folder, Emoji Defenders, and let's get into it here. Change the camera. So we're going to need a HTML document. We're going to need a style sheet, and we're going to need a JavaScript file. And ladies and gentlemen, this is it. We're not using jQuery, we're not using Vue, we're not using React, we're not using Babel, we're not using Webpack, we're not using any of that. These three files is the only thing you need. These three files and Notepad. If you're using Windows, just use Notepad. That's all you need. However, I recommend using VS Code or Sublime Text or some other editor, but basically we're going very bare bones. And we're doing that for many reasons. A, it gives us absolute control to optimize everything that we need. B, it keeps the tool and technology stack extremely small and easy to maintain. And lastly, it's just we don't need any of that extra stuff. I mean, I don't want to be too polarizing here. There are absolutely cases where those things are extremely beneficial. But I find that in like 95 out of 100 times, you don't need any of that stuff, and it just adds extra layers of complexity to the project for no reason. So we're going very bare bones, and pretty much all the logic is going to be controlled just by vanilla JavaScript. So I'm going to open this up in VS Code. So here we are in VS Code. So here's the index.html file. So we have the content type, and it's set to UTF-8, the char set. Here's the viewport, just the basic viewport for mobile. However, we're probably going to update this. Because the default viewport, you know, you can like pinch to zoom in on websites. Well, we actually want to disable that functionality. We don't want people to be able to pinch to zoom in because that's going to disrupt the flow of the game and probably cause issues. Unfortunately, I don't remember what I need to change this to disable that, but that's what Google's for. And by the way, that's actually something I want to drive home. Just because you got to look something up on Google or you can't remember a specific function or syntax, that doesn't make you a bad developer. If you want to look something up, look it up. Stack Overflow is like the holy Bible for coding. Use it. Use it to your advantage, please. In fact, I'm probably going to forget what the syntax is on a function, and you're probably going to see me just Google it many times in this video. It's not, you know, you're not a smarter or better programmer just because you have it exactly locked in your head. Programming is all about problem solving. Use the tools to your advantage to solve the problem at hand. That's what makes you a good programmer. So I believe I called in emoji defenders. It's probably not the best name. It makes it sound like the emojis are the one defending, even though they're going to be the enemies, but whatever. For those of you that don't know the theme color, so in Chromium browsers on mobile, you know, like where the address bar is and stuff, you can actually change the color of that depending on the site. So we might actually change this depending on what design and color we go through. So here we are importing the style sheet. Here we are importing the JavaScript. We actually don't need the home class for this. And this is basically it. This is almost the final HTML file we're going to use. We're going to add a couple divs to this, but this is basically it. The script file is just blank. We don't need anything in there yet. And here's the style sheet. So I'm just going to label this. Don't need this. If you don't know, this is just to basically help element sizing. You don't need it if you don't want, but it definitely makes things a bit easier on normal projects. You know what? I'm actually gonna. I don't even think we need that for this project, so I'm just gonna delete that. We don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need this. So this is it. This is the style sheet. So sorry, yeah. Whenever I create a new file on my computer, it already kind of sets in like the basic styles that I want. But for this, we don't need a lot of that. So this is it. This is the basic bare bones. We just need, you know, set the margin and padding to 0, set the heights to fill the screen, set the font family to whatever your browser's native sans serif, so whatever your device's native sans serif is, and that's it. We're good to go. So let's now actually start designing. So we're gonna want a div. We'll call it game, I guess. So this is the base. So this div called game is the div that's going to contain everything that exists for us. This is where all our elements. This is where we end up adding clouds just for design. Clouds going by. The actual emojis, the enemies that spawn, the castle, the ground, the sky. All that's going to be contained in game. In fact, now that I bring it up, let's add another div. We'll call it world. So world will contain mainly design elements. So we'll go sky. Castle, I guess. Don't know why that extra space is there. And ground. I know I'm very original in my div namings, but then again, specificity is great. You know, anyone who sees this knows that, oh, I have a feeling this div is going to contain something to do with the sky. You know. So there we go. So we got game, world. Yep, that all seems good. So now let's actually design this. So let's go game, height 100% just to make sure that it also fills. We'll also want the world to have a 100% height. You know what? Here's a great excuse to use CSS Grid. So what we want is we're going to want to have two columns. We're going to want to have a bottom column that's going to be the ground. That'll be X pixels high. And then we want the sky to fill the rest. So we're going to go grid template rows because we're building rows. I can't even remember. Did I just misspeak and say columns before? Whatever. If I did, I meant to say rows. So we're going to go 1FR. And FR, I think it stands for like fractal or something like that. But think of it as like free. So 1FR means like one free space. So if I were to just leave it as this, it basically means that we're creating one row that'll fill 100% of the available space. So we want 1FR and I don't know, 60 pixels, which basically means we have two rows. The bottom row will be 60 pixels, and then the top row will fill whatever is remaining. So now let's do sky. We'll do background color. I think there's an actual sky. Yeah, there's a sky blue. We want the ground. And I think it's like a forest green. Oh. Spring green, nah, it's too bright. I think there's something called a forest green. What's that yellow green? Nah, let's do forest green, sure. So that's great. The problem is, if you remember, I have this set to only 2 rows. Problem is we have 3 divs here. So what we now need to do is we need to take this castle kind of outside of that. So we're going to want to go position absolutes. We're going to want to give it a width, 100 pixels, height 100 pixels. I don't know. We set it to 60, right? So then maybe we'll go 40 from the bottom. And might as well keep it consistent, 40 from the right. So this will basically place the castle onto the bottom right, or if just for the camera, the bottom right of the screen. Is there anything else we need? We should probably set, it's actually not needed because everything's going to be set to the full size of the viewport, but we should set this to position relative. And the reason for that is basically setting this to position relative just makes the calculations easier on the browser. So it's less kind of CPU intensive because it has to figure out less about it. So let's actually take a look at what we have here. So I'm going to open this up. And I think if I press Control, nice. So I'm going to open up the browser console. And for those of you that don't know, this little icon right here actually switches the view to mobile view. So what I did, I just switched it to mobile view, to mobile mode, which means it actually, see, you can see the cursor change to like a touch zone. We're currently emulating an iPhone 6, 7, 8 size. I got it zoomed into 150% just so it kind of fills up the video a bit. And I got the aspect set to landscape mode. And just to be clear, I absolutely am an Android user, but the iPhone, the setting actually has the image of the phone for the demo. So this makes the video look a bit nicer, a bit more immersive to actually see the phone. So here we have it, except I don't know if you've noticed, but we're not seeing the castle. How come the castle isn't showing? Let's take a look at what I screwed up here. Oh, so never mind. It is working. I just was an idiot and actually didn't set background color. You're going to see me making a lot of stupid mistakes in this video. So what's, I don't know, gray? Yeah, gray. Let's go back. There we go. That's what it was there. It is that we didn't have a color set, so it wasn't visible. So as you can see, I mean, it's pretty simple right now. It's not the prettiest or most robust, but this right now, this is for this first video. Let's just make things kind of simple and bare bones. You know, let's get the logic in, and then we can kind of upgrade the design. We can add some maybe rolling hills. We can add some nice, beautiful animated clouds going by. We can add some texture to the grass. We can add weather effects, a day and night cycle. Maybe have a moon bobbing up and down. Give them some cool guys, sunshades like you know, or like the sun has, or you know, there's lots of things we can do to improve the design and immersion to make this look a bit nicer. But for now, I mean, this is very simple. We got sky, ground, castle or base. That's it. That's all we need. So what we're going to do is we're going to have emojis spawn here. The enemies will spawn here. And they're going to animate over to the castle. We're going to start attacking it. We're going to want to be able to, you know, click and drag the emoji. And if they drop from like here, they'll survive and continue. If we drop them from here, they'll die. And when they all die, the wave ends. We go to the next wave. And I think once we get that far into it, once we actually get the, you know, the enemies spawning, have them correctly animating, we have the drag and drop and, you know, that kind of stuff. Once we have that ready, I think that'll be a great place to end the first video. So let's get into it. So I guess now we need to actually start doing the actual coding of it. So let's go to our script file. So something I've been really embracing over the last few years is the concept of, in JavaScript, literally everything is an object. Functions are object, arrays are objects, everything's an object in JavaScript. So when you really embrace that, you can kind of, I've been kind of chaining, or chaining is not the right word, but kind of making my entire program one giant object that can reference itself. And I just find that makes organizing your code a lot better. It makes increases legibility and readability quite a bit. And although we're not doing it in this video, I'll probably end up doing in the next video, is when you start using kind of modules. So basically, instead of just importing everything from one script file, we'll create many JavaScript files to help keep everything organized, and easier to find the code that we're looking for if we need to edit or make a change. It makes that a lot easier to do and understand as well. So just for example, if I were to write a function like this, we all know what this function is. But you can also write that exact same function like this, if you type it right. Oh, and if you're not an idiot, there we go. So there's like lots of different ways to write functions, right? So basically here we're storing a function and a variable. Here we just have a function name, right? So, but we're going to be kind of embracing this second style here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a constant called $, and the dollar, and it's just going to be an object. And this object right here is going to contain our entire programming logic. So for those of you that know jQuery, you can use jQuery like this, or something like that, right? And for those of you that also know jQuery, you know that there's a shorthand. So instead of having to write jQuery, you can just do this. The reason you can use that $ to reference jQuery is because when you import jQuery, what's essentially happening is this. $= equals jQuery. That way, instead of having to type jQuery, you can just use the $ as a shorthand. That's essentially what we're doing here. This $ is just gonna be referencing everything. So what do we need? I guess we're going to need elements. We're going to need kind of global variables. I guess that's it for now. So what this EL variable will do is we'll use this to store the different document variables. So for instance, we'll store the world, we'll store the castle, we'll store the enemies. We'll store all these things. We'll store all of these actual kind of nodes here in the EL variable, just so we can more quickly and easily reference them later in our code. Variables is where we'll store global variables. So for instance, the viewport size, the location of the castle, the current score, how much gold you have, what level we're on. We'll store all those kind of global variables here. And the reason we want to store that in the global variable so that we don't have to like recalculate it every time. So instead of having to be like, oh, what's the document size? Great. Instead of having to figure that out every single time we need it, we just figure it out once. Makes things a bit easier. So what do we need here? So we're going to want world. Document.getElementById. I believe we just called it world. We'll want the castle. And do we need anything else? Let's actually add the full game, the game.element as well. And I don't think we don't need anything else right now. We'll definitely be expanding that list as we start to add more elements. For instance, if we have a settings button, we're going to need that. If we have, settings, we're going to have toggles for, enable or disable sound, or, a pause button or anything. We can reference all the icons and clickable elements. Basically any element that we need to manipulate or change, we can reference here. Now for the variables, maybe we'll call it document. And document will also be an object that will store the height and width of the document. We'll want to store the score. we'll want to store gold. That'll be our currency, the current level. But we'll technically be like level plus 1 for the visual level, but we're going to kind of use it like an array. So the actual starting level will technically be 0. Don't know why I air quoted that, but what else do we need to store in variables? You know what, we're not going to build this now, but later on we're going to want to have weather. We'll want to store different weather patterns. You know what? Time. So I guess instead of, we'll call this, I don't know, clear. So these are the kind of variables that we can store, you know, archers, right? We're going to be able to build archers. So archers will be how many archers we have. Actually, let's extend this even more. So we're going to want enabled false. So whether we're allowed to even have archers or not, because we're going to need to buy, like the plan I have is like you need to buy an archery training grounds or a marksmanship training grounds or something like that. And then once you've bought that initial piece of equipment or training grounds, then you can start buying archers. So this will be like what we can use to figure out whether you're even allowed to buy archers, and this will store how many archers you actually have. So I mean, you know, one thing, we're not actually going to be using, I don't think we're actually going to use any of these variables in this video, but they'll certainly be used later. So now let's actually build our first function. It's console log just to let us know that yep, we booted up. So how do we run this function? Just like that. $.init will now run this function. So actually, let's just test that. There we go, nice and good. It's working. Go back. So now that we've initted, I guess we need to start actually spawning our enemies now. So let's create a new function called, let's call it spawn. This should probably be an async function. So if you don't know what async and awake is, JavaScript basically, when you run functions, this isn't exactly true, but think of it like functions can run in parallel. So you run, let's say you have a function A and a function B. You run function A and it returns a value. You then run function B and pass the value of function A as a parameter. Problem is, it's possible in JavaScript that function B runs before function A has finished to get the result. And that's not good. So what async does is it basically allows you to await the result of a function, allowing you to ensure that the data gets passed along correctly. So, you know, in a lot of cases, it's not needed. If you're just making an update, you don't really care when it gets done, just do it as soon as possible. But when it comes to spawning, since we're going to be doing things like we're going to animate, you know, like we don't, for instance, that's a good example. So we don't want to start trying to animate an enemy over, you know, to walking towards the base before we've actually placed and created the enemy on the map, right? So by using async and await, we can basically guarantee that the order of operations is happening the way we want it. So we got a spawn function and we'll call it enemy. So we'll create enemy. So what enemy will be? Enemy will be an object that contains the parameters of the spawned function of the spawned enemy. So for instance, we're going to want to have different enemy types. Enemies that move fast, that move slow. Enemies that do a lot of damage, enemies that do a little damage. We might want to have enemies that fly in the air eventually or something like that. So let's go and create an enemy. let enemy equal so what parameters do we want? Let's go speed. So speed will be how many pixels it moves at a time. So it'll move 1 pixel at a time. Damage 1. Flying false. In case it's a flying emoji or something. Actually, no, we'll do the flying and different damage types later. Then we'll do bottom 20. Okay, so the reason I put bottom in there is because that's basically how far from the bottom it's going to spawn. And the reason for that is I might end up introducing different enemy types, like a flying type. So if we have a different flying type, then we want it to spawn at a different location. So that's what I put that in there for. I may or may not actually end up using that. I don't know. So let's no, I know what we need to do. So there we go. So face will be the actual emoji that we're going to use. So I guess we'll create another function called get face. It will also need to be async. If I can spell it right. So we'll do await. So there we go. So now what we need is okay, so let's go emojis. And we'll go default and survive. So basically default will be an array of emojis that will be the emoji that spawns. Survive will be, so like I said, so if you drop an emoji from high enough, it'll die. But if it doesn't drop from high enough, it survives. So so just an idea how this is like, if it survives, I want to change it into like a different kind of emoji, like a different face that mocks you for not being able to kill it or something like that. So let's go back here. What's the web? I think it's called Emojipedia. Yeah, Emojipedia. Sorry. So I'm on Emojipedia, and let's grab a list of emojis. So I'm going to zoom in to make it easier to see for you. So sure, grinning face. These could be default emojis. What would be a good one here? Sure, that's probably good enough for now. So I'm just going to go back to the, and just start copying and pasting these over. So default. Those even do, oh, the eyes are different. Then we'll make this one a survive. So if it survives, it has a chance to turn into that. The kind of crying, laughing, just to really mock you, like, haha, you suck, you couldn't even, oh, this is a great one. The angel halo, that'll be really good for one that survives. Yeah, maybe apparently it's called woozy face. So there we go. So now what we need to do is we need to write a function that randomly grabs one of these faces. Oh, so we also want to pass in survive equals false. So by default, survive will equal false. So if survive is false, then we'll grab default. If survive is true, then we'll grab one of these. So we need a way to randomly grab it. So remember when I said that there's no shame in just Googling something? Here's an example. So I just Googled JavaScript get random number between because I couldn't remember the exact syntax. So this is a function here. So this here is a function to get a random, actually I should probably make this its own function. So we need a min and a max number. We actually don't want to add the +1 because 0 is a acceptable answer. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to, so what we want to do is we want to figure out if we're surviving or not. So if not survive, and we're going to need to pass the min and max. So the min is always going to be 0, and the max will be .vares.emojis .default.length. So this is basically going to be it's going to return a random number between 0 and 3. And here we're going to basically do the same thing, except for instead of .default, .survive. So you might be wondering why I did this instead of just hard coding in. It's because if I add or remove emojis from this list, I also need to modify it here. But by doing it this way, I can extend this as much as I want and don't have to care about this. I also need to await these. So right now, all this is doing is returning a random number, but a random number isn't good enough. We want to return the actual emoji. So let's actually go back here. And do that. So this is kind of an annoying one-liner. So just to quickly explain this, let's say you have a variable called something like this, right? So if I wanted to reference this array, what I would do is I'd go array 1, because it's the 0, 1, right? Or, you know, if I want to make this a bit less confusing, something like that, right? So I'd go, if I wanted to reference B, I'd go array 1, right? So we're basically doing the same thing. You know, vares.emoji.default is this array. This returns the random number. So whatever that random number, let's say the random number ends up being 0, then basically this is returning the first. So that's essentially what we're doing here. So let's actually console log our enemy and make sure that this is working the way that we want it to work. Unexpected identifier, line 33. Oh. So the reason is I'm using await in a function that isn't async. Something about this actually doesn't look right. Like what? Like what's math.ran? I think Google might have lied to us in this one. Let me look this up. That just doesn't feel right. Okay, I just found a better one that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, this here makes a lot more damn sense. Math.random. That feels right. Okay, so console, oh, here's another issue, console.log, enemy. Okay, let's take a look at this. There we go, so, uh-oh, saying undefined. So getFace is returning undefined. Oh. So the getRandom is returning a float. Oh, I see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I need to use dot floor. Yeah, this is what I need. Let's go back to that. Yeah, so basically we were returning a float. The dot floor basically forces it to be a whole number, and we need to get rid of the +1 since 0 is an acceptable number. So this should work. So we got that. Yep, so we can see the emojis randomizing. So every time I refresh, we get a different emoji there. So I know the font size is really small there, but hopefully you can still see that. So there we go. So now we actually have an enemy being created every time. So now we need to actually add the enemy to the page. So let's do const data equals. Let's write it as a span. So what do we want? Ooh, you know what? This isn't the way to, because we're gonna want to reference this dot element we're creating to send it to like an animate function. So I was actually just gonna like inline it, but I don't think that's actually not a good idea too. So instead, let's do we'll just call it EL. Let EL equal document dot creates element span. So we're creating a span. EL dot classless dot add enemy. So we create it as an enemy. We now need to, let's set some custom data attributes. EL dot set attributes. Data speed 1. Data damage. I don't think we actually need the other one. And instead of 1, so we want to go enemy dot speed, enemy dot damage. That way, if we actually change these two parameters, we get that no problem. So that creates that stuff. Now we need to set its initial position. So let's just set it at 0 px. Okay, so here's what's interesting. So we actually don't want to set the bottom, because if we set bottom, then we're kind of doing our math from the bottom of the screen up, when for most things like the drag and drop and the following mode, we actually want to do the top to bottom. So this is a great opportunity to now set this document height and width. So before I continue this, in our init function, let's set some of those default values. So we'll go $$vars.document.width equals I think inner width? Yeah, I actually think that'll work. So I think that will work. And then what we can do here is we can go el.style.top equals vars.document dot height minus enemy dot bottom plus pixel. So I think this will work. I think that'll work. So let's actually add the element now. So we'll go, that was a chance to use our el.game. So how do you, I think append child? I think that's it. So we basically create a document, we set the class, we give it a class of enemy, we set some data attributes that we can help use during the animation function stuff. We set its default position to 0 and its default top position to whatever the height of the screen is minus whatever the enemy's bottom is. That way it kind of balances out. And that's it. So basically we're setting it to 0 left right now, just so that we can easily visually see on the screen its position. But once we confirm that it's working, I'm actually going to set the left to like a negative version. That way it actually spawns off screen and moves over. That way it doesn't look like it's just magically appearing on the screen. So now that that's done, oh, we need to actually go back to our style sheet, because we're going to want to go enemy. And we're going to want to go position absolute. That way it can actually position where it needs to go. So let's take a look at this. And it did not work. Why did this not work? Oh, I see. So it's here, it did work. Oh, we actually, well, I say I actually forgot another thing, another important thing. So we set everything except the actual emoji. So el.inner HTML equals enemy dot face. So now let's go back. And the emoji's there, although its position is wrong. Oh, what are the odds? So this is really, so it was first of all, it was a minor oversight on my end here, but I just think it's interesting that the math almost worked out flawlessly. So here's what I did in the logic here. So basically we want the emoji to start at 20 from the bottom. So we get the full height of the document. We minus that 20, right? And that sets us to setting the top to where the 20 is. Here's the problem though. Top starts at the top of the element. So top starts here. So the top of this actually is the full thing minus 20, which means it's actually positioned exactly where it's supposed to be. Problem is we also want to offset this by the height of the emoji, which as you can see is 20. It's got a width of 19.97 and a height. So I just think it's really, what are the chances that it ended up being the exact same size? And that's actually something we should also change in the settings here. So let's actually set a font size. So let's set a font size of like 22 pixels or something. We want nice, big, beefy emojis that are easier to actually get your finger on, not as finicky to get your finger on. So now what we need here is let's actually go back to our JavaScript and back where we had our emojis. So let's go back to our emoji and go size. And we're going to want to get what the average size is. So I think it should be like, we also want to set line height to 1 just in case. So now, yeah, so now that line height's 1, the size should be literally 22 pixels. So we'll set this to 22. So now we'll go back down to, where do we put it? Here we go. So vars.height minus enemy.bottom minus emojis dot size plus pixel. So this should now offset it by the height. Perfect. So the emoji is correctly spawning in the correct spot. So basically what we want is the emoji will basically come down here and attack here. I'm also thinking I might want to lower the position of the castle. What do you think? Yeah, let's change the position of the castle. I want the castle to be a bit lower. So where did I have the castle? Oh, it's right here. I'm going to set that to 20 and 20. I just think that looks a bit nicer. There we go. So now that we got the emoji spawning, we need to actually animate it over. And this is where things get really interesting. Well, actually, I'd say things get really interesting once we actually add in the interactivity, being able to select and drop the emoji, stuff like that, but you get the idea. So, sorry, I have to get practical coding. So now that we've actually appended the document, let's send this element to a animate function. So we'll create a new function called travel. In this function, I don't see why this function would need to be asynchronous. I think we can just do this function as normal. So this function will take variable for enemy. So we'll go so we're basically sending the element that we just created to this function called travel. So this isn't a reference. This isn't the same reference. You know what? Just to keep simplicity, I'm gonna call it EL just to keep simplicity. So yeah. So what we want to do is we want to animate it from here all the way over to the middle of the castle. So what we need to do is we need to figure out where the middle of the castle is. That way we know to stop animating. So let's actually go back to here and we'll do one more. So under the global variables, we have document, we have emojis. Let's create base. So what information could be useful? So we'll want to know the height, because when I eventually add in archers, we're going to want to know where to actually shoot the arrows from. So we're going to want to know the height of the base. We're going to want to know I don't know, maybe the far left of the base, if I end up having, I don't know, walls that can be attacked or something. I don't know. And we're going to want to know the attack position. So for this, I'm going to use, I mean, it's technically going to be the bottom middle, you know, the vertical middle. It's going to be right here, the middle axis here is where what we're going to have here. But I'm calling it attack because it's essentially a position where the emojis can now start attacking. So just like we set them in the init function, let's set this here. Well, instead of base, let's just call it base. No, let's keep it consistent. I'm gonna rename it to castle. I've been calling it castle everywhere. Let's be consistent. So remember, we made a reference to castle here in EL, so I can just go. Now, once again, I know that I actually hard-coded in the size to, I think, 100. But once again, the fact that I'm doing this this way is so that I can easily change the design and position and all that and not need to worry about remembering to also do it on the coding side. It'll just automatically, magically work. And because I'm setting it as a variable, it's not extra work for the program. You're not figuring out every time. You only figure it out once, which is really fast. And then you don't need to worry about it ever again. So you know what I actually am going to need? Let's set width as well. Might as well set the width. So I'm actually not going to bother setting left right now, but it's there in case we need it. But basically left will be this position here. And like just as I've been building, I've been thinking of ideas. Like I might have a bomb emoji, like an emoji that rolls, and when it hits here, it explodes and something, I don't know. And instead of having it like hit in the center, I might want it to hit there, or I don't know, I might want to have other animations that are dependent on how far left this is. I don't know. But that's what the left, that's why I decided to have left. But what really matters is the attack. So actually we might as well set that left parameter now because we're going to be referencing it very soon. So the attack position is going to be the castle width divided by 2 because we want the center. And it's going to be the offset left plus that. Done. So now castle.attack is going to be the position that we want the emoji to stop traveling towards. So let's go back to our travel function here. So let travel equal set interval. So the reason we're using set interval instead of set timer is because set timer is basically like interfering. Like when set timeout goes, it kind of like it takes priority. Threading stops, everything else stops until that kind of runs. We don't want that. We want our animation to be nice and smooth. So we're going to use set interval. And another benefit of setting interval is you can easily like clear the timer. It just makes things easier to do. And set interval works just like set timeout. So it's like function time. So we're going to want it to run every 10 milliseconds. And we'll do a function called move. So every 10 milliseconds, we're using we're going to run a function called move. So let's actually write that function. So we're going to want to get the current position of the emoji. Let position equal el dot get attribute data left. And we're going to want to set this as an interval. We set it as an interval because by default attributes are strings, like because they're data attributes embedded in the actual like HTML DOM. So we're going to want to convert it into an integer. That way we can actually do math with it. And like I said, let's embrace the idea of objects are good. So we'll go so let's actually set the data left and data top as well as attributes. Well, actually, we might as well do that last. Or I guess we can do it here. Like I said, I'm kind of figuring this out as we go, you know. I probably should have done a full coding of this at least once. So that way a lot of these figuring stuff out would have already been done. So the top is going to be this. And the left is going to start at 0. Set myself a little to-do. Leave myself a little note that when we actually change this to the real number to change it here as well, that's so I don't forget. Okay, so we got travel. We got move. We're getting the current position. So now what we want to do is we want to check to see whether the emoji is finished moving or whether it's still needs to move. So if pos dots left is greater than equal to flowers dot castle dot attack and pos dot top is greater than equal I just realized I probably we don't need this right now, but I'm thinking once again, once we get flying emojis and stuff, we're going to want to make sure that it's if the emojis, we don't want to just check the left axis. We don't want to just check the x-axis because the emoji could be flying here. We don't want it to attack. We want it to fly and come down, or at least that's what I want it to do. So I also want to check the y-axis, but we don't have the data set up to check this at the moment without hard coding in it. And like I said, the whole point is I don't want to hard code in values like that because I want to play around with them. Okay, well, for now, just for simplicity, we'll skip the checking the y-axis since we don't have any of those in. And when we actually build the flying emojis, we'll deal with that then. So if the left position is greater than equal to where the center of the castle to attack, then we're going to want to clear the travel. So basically, once we've reached it, clear out this interval and stop running this move function. However, if we haven't achieved that, then we need to go ahead with the animation. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to figure out what the speed is. So let's speed equal el.get attribute data speed, and once again we're going to want to parse it. Make sure it's an integer. So this is the speed that we're going to actually move on. Once again, if we have flying emoji, we're going to change the top and bottom, but we're not going to deal with flying enemies right now. We're just going to do the basic enemies. So we're going to go. So first, we're going to want to update the data attribute. That way, we can use it as reference. And we're going to want to set it to pos.left plus speed. And then we're also going to want to set the style. So this should kind of work. Let's check it out. Hey, look at him go. Look at the little buddy go. Uh-oh. So in case you didn't notice, he's still going, and he shouldn't have. He should have stopped. So why didn't he stop? So let's take a look here. Maybe I screwed up this. I probably see. So I just console log the castle.attack variable. So yeah, see, castle.attack is NaN, not a number. So that's our issue there. So let's figure out what we screwed up, or what's I screwed up in the castle.attack when we went to figure that out. So this here. So I'm gonna console log these out. Oh, look right here. That there's probably the issue. Yay, it worked, kind of. But see, he went a little too far. Once again, because I forgot to offset for the width of the emoji. But for those of you that may have caught this earlier, I mean, good on you. I will completely overlook that. So here's a problem. So the width and height of the emoji aren't going to be the same. So let's go up to the emoji. So we'll go size and we'll do the same thing that we did before. Let's actually go in and set it. Actually, you know what? Bad idea. Because I'm gonna have like different. I want to have like different kinds of emojis. I want to have emojis that you know, like giants and stuff. So their size is gonna change. The size is gonna change depending on the type of emoji. So I think that we should actually set that here as another data variable. Or actually, we can actually, this is something that's fairly lightweight enough, we can actually just figure it out right here. We can just do it right in the, so. I think I might need to actually divide that by 2. Uh-oh. I actually don't know, is maybe el.innerWidth isn't working. Yeah. Yeah, so I shouldn't have used inner width. I think I can actually just use directly just dot width. Nope. Let's try client width. There we go. Client width is what we want. No shame in making mistakes. So let's try this again. Yeah, so we stopped too soon, so what I need to do is I need to divide this by 2. We only want half of it. So now it should be finally perfect. I don't even know, how long has this video been going on? So we've been recording for just over an hour, and we haven't really done much yet. But the thing is, we've actually set so much of the groundwork. The kind of cool things are really going to start happening fast now. So for instance, just to verify this, the emoji is randomizing every single time. Great. So now what we want to do is we want to basically send out multiple emojis at once. Excuse me. So how do I want to do this? So let's create another object called levels. Or I guess it'll be an array. Yeah, an array of objects. So this first object will be the first levels, and we'll do you know what? I think we actually might just need to do an array of arrays. Yeah, I think we need to do it this way. So what do we have here? What do we do? So we had speed, damage, bottom, and face. So one thing to note is that we actually can't do this anymore, because this isn't a func. We can't await this. And second, we're basically referencing getFace before getFace actually exists as part of the object. So we're going to need to actually set face to just 0, to just blank or something. And I changed my mind one more time. Not about what you might think though. So I'm going to basically go time. Enemy. Okay. So basically what I'm thinking is time will be the delay between the next spawn. So basically 100 will be for milliseconds. So 100 milliseconds and this spawns. An emoji that has an attack, a speed of 1, a damage of 1, bottom, face will not be set yet. And then what we can do is, it's an array, so we just do that as much as we need. So for instance, after 100, and then after 100 milliseconds after this is spawned, this guy will spawn, then this guy. Well, I'm going to change this to 1,000. So 1 second after, let's do another second. Let's do two seconds. Let's do 400 milliseconds. Let's do a really fast one, and almost immediately after. Let's do, you know, well, it needs to be, since we're doing on a 10 millisecond interval here, so it needs to be at least divisible by 10. And I don't know, that's enough. I don't want to wait that long. So this is basically our giant object for the emojis. So basically it's an array. So this is the first level, and then I could just copy it. There's our second level. There's our third level. You get the idea. And you know, once again, I could change each individual emoji to change their speed. So for instance, if I wanted to have a fast emoji, I could set him to 2. And this guy will move twice as fast as the others. No, so I actually don't want that. At least not yet. So I think that's a good way to do it. Yeah, I like this. This is a good, clean way. But what we need to do is we need to set the faces for all of them. So let's actually go back in here into our init. We'll go set emoji faces. So we're going to go for, we'll just do a simple for loop. For I equals 0, while I is less than, did I make a plural? Level or level is good. So now we're looping through each level, and now what we need to do is we need to actually loop through each individual emoji of the level. So let's call it x. We'll let x equals 0, while x is less than, there's the levels I. So just to make sure I'm not screwing this up. So levels is the first arrays, which will loop us through this. And we loop through that again to get this. So this dot enemy dot face. So this should loop through everything and then set all of those emojis to give them a face. So let's take a look at that. Let's console log that for a quick test. And it looks like they all, yep, so that worked. Beautiful. That was nice. That was something that worked nice and easy and didn't cause us any issues. So now that we've set all the emojis for the levels, we need to create a new function to actually spawn them. So this is the main spawn, but we need to set like a start level or something like that. So let's create a new function called start. Let's just call it start level. So this is our start level function. And we'll go level. This is just for simplicity. Cool. So remember, the vars.level is the current level we're on. Where did I store it? There it is. So that's what I'm referencing here. And the only reason I'm saving it as another variable called level, you know what? I was going to say it just makes things a bit easier, but it's already so small. Screw it. Let's just keep it like this. So we're going to want to send something through a. So we're going to want another interval. We're going to want it to be every 10 milliseconds. And we'll make the function called spawn. Even though there's already a function here called spawn, this is a local function called spawn. So now what do we want to do? How are we going to do this? So first of all, I changed my mind. I don't want to call this level anymore. I'll just call it timer. And instead I'll go let level equal so we're now, level now contains a direct reference to this array. We also want a let time equals 0. We'll go time plus equals 10 for every 10 milliseconds. We'll do that at the end of the function, and we'll go if time equals level, the first reference to level. Excuse me. Dot time. Yeah, let's just do it this way. I'm just trying to think through, like, I'm not, if the way I'm thinking of doing this, I'm just trying to think of whether this will cause any problems down the road, but I think this will be fine. So we're basically saying if times, the variable that we're using to keep time, if it equals whatever this is, if it equals that, then we're basically going to spawn the emoji. And no, I guess we do need this to be async because I want to await this. And you know what? For simplicity, we're never going to spawn a unit literally at 0. So time equals 0. Let's reset time. And then we also want to go in here, level dot length 0. So like if we no longer have any levels, then clear interval timer console.log. All enemies spawned. Apparently I screwed something up somewhere. What did I screw up, boys? Oh wait, spawn isn't working. Oh, it's because this isn't async. There we go. There we go, that looks a lot better. So now here in the spawn function, what we want to do is we want to now splice away this enemy. So we don't know what splice does. It basically removes the value from the array. So we're removing the first element of the array, and we're only removing one. So for instance, if I were to do 2, it would remove the first 2, the first 3. Or to do this, it would remove only one element starting from 2, ending at 3. So I think this will work. Let's check it out. It's not working. Oh, it's because I never actually started. Let's actually run the start function. There we go. Oh, nice. It's working. Look at that. They're all stopping in the right place. It's correctly recognized that all the emojis have spawned. Oh yeah, that worked. Beautiful. Much nicer than I expected. I mean, I was actually just the way that I was expecting something to go wrong. Now I'm worried. I missed something. So we're almost getting to the end of where I think I want to finish this video. What I want to do is I want to first add in the some interaction so that we can actually interact with the game. Because right now it's almost like we're just doing animations. In fact, I want to do a couple things here actually. So first, so it's not mattering that much because we're doing it A every 10 milliseconds, B we're only moving them 1 pixel at a time. But just to show you, let's go back to this. So let's do this guy here. Let's give his speed something larger, like 30 pixels. And now let's watch that animation. I'm actually not sure. Well, I guess the good news is this just showed us that I missed something in the logic. So I've noticed a couple issues here. So first of all, they're not all spawning. And second of all, every single one of them has speed set to 1 when I just set one of them to 30. So I missed something here in the logic. What did I screw up? So let's check this over again. So we start the level, boom. Let's actually do this as a console log to help us. Okay, so if you look, it's actually only figuring. So the issue seems to be here. So there's something wrong with my if time equals time. So let's take a look here. Let's try to figure out what's going on here. So console.log time. So I'm pretty damn sure that's working well. So the issue must be here. So I know I didn't have the camera set on the okay, so that's working. So what I think the issue actually is, I think the issue is in my splice. When I'm splicing it out, I think that's the issue here. So you know what? Let's get rid of the splicing. Oh, wait a minute. But I have that at 2 the entire time? Oh my. It's supposed to be a 1. I think that was the issue. Okay, there we go. And by the way, so that did a bunch of things for us. So the first thing is that everything's actually spawning right now. And the second thing is, let's go back to the script, because apparently 30 is way too damn high. But yeah, so see how, so let's set this guy to something a bit more reasonable, 10. So that guy's going to move at 10 pixels. See how fast he went there? But because it was so fast, it didn't look as bad. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to slow down the timer. So I'm going to slow down the spawn timer. Or sorry, the movement timer. So right now we're moving every 10 milliseconds. Let's slow that down by 10. So once again, right now they're moving out. These guys are moving at. See how janky that is? And I don't know. I think I'm recording this at 60 FPS. But see how janky that was? That was awful. It looked terrible, right? So janky and how that animated. So let's look at how we can actually fix that. So let's go back here to our enemy, and we're going to go transition all linear. And then we're going to want to set it to the same. So because I'm going to change this back down to 10, but just because I set it for the example was 100 milliseconds. So let's take a look at what this looks like now again. Oh, nice and smooth. Gotta love that. So I'm going to set this down back to 10 and set this back to 10. So once again, it's not that big of a deal because right now we're moving in so slow and nice fast 10 millisecond increments. We're only moving 1 pixel at a time. But especially if you're on like a slower device or a device with a really high resolution, you'll definitely be able to see and notice that jankiness, especially if you're running this on an older phone or something like that. So that's why, you know, that kind of CSS animation goes a long way. Another thing that we might want to do here is we might want to force it to be 3D rendered, which basically means that it renders based off your GPU instead of CPU, which once again will drastically increase performance pretty much across the board. But you know, it'll primarily make a big difference on lower end phones. Look at him go, that looks so cool. There we go, that looks a lot smoother now. Yeah, looks great. So I'm just going to go back and change that 10 back into a 1. So now let's actually do the drag and drop, and that'll be it for this first video. So when we spawn it, oops, sorry, let me go back to the camera. So here we go. So when we spawn it, we actually want to send the not just a travel, we want to set it to an interaction function. We'll call the function grab emoji or grab enemy. And it will be EL. So we'll send this also. So now we need to set an event to listener. So we're going to go EL dot add, or sorry, set, no, add event listener. And what is, so I think it's called touch move. I'm pretty sure it's called touch move. We'll figure out soon. So touch move, and the function will run when you touch move will be, we'll just call the function grab. So we're going to want to do several things here. So the first one thing we're going to want to set a new custom data attribute. So we set a custom data attribute called data grab, and we set it to yes. And that'll be used to basically stop the travel function. So in here, we'll also check the status of that. So we'll let is grabbed equal el dot get attributes data grab. If is grabbed equals yes, then clear the interval. Yep, that should work. So now that we've set that, we now need to figure out the event. So let's go here. And first let's make sure grab, good, grab. Perfect. So because it grabbed, it stopped animating. Perfect. So now what we need to do, we need to figure out which of these is the enemy, because we basically want to move the enemy along with where our touch is. So let's take a look at this and see what we got here. I feel like target touches, or maybe touches. So I don't know if we want screen or client X as our value. So let's do some tests. There we go, clear console. So I'm going to okay, so that's top left. So we should be fairly low numbers here. So it looks like we want client X and client Y. Okay. So we'll go let X equal E dot touches. I assume that touches is an array because of like multi-finger touching, right? But we, for now, we don't want to allow multi-touching, so we're just going to always grab the first. So if a user, if a gamer uses multiple touches at once, we just care about the primary touch. Dot client X. We'll do the same for Y. So we now know the touch position. So for instance, I could just go like EL Well, we need to set the data attributes again. Data x, data y. We can go like el dot style dot left equals x plus px, and the same for y. So for instance, right here, oh shit, sorry, camera. So just a quick thing here. So I set variables x and y to be the touches client x and client y, which I believe we will test it, but I believe that's like the touch position. I set the data attributes for x and y that we use, you know, as part of the travel and all that, and then I physically set the style to that. Problem is, it's going to be offset because we need to also offset this for the emoji width and height. But just to show you that this works, or it should work. Okay, yeah. Once again, see how it's like offset. It's like, you know, our touch positions to the top left of the emoji when we want it to be more center. So let's figure out how to do that. So right here, we're going to want to do minus el dot width divided by 2. El dot height divided by 2. You actually don't, by the way, you don't actually need to do these parentheses, but I like to do it because it just makes things easier and cleaner. But as you see, as soon as you printify it, it removes it, which is kind of annoying. But no, sorry, you actually can't see it because once again, I forgot the camera. There we go. So all I did was basically get the, you know, the element, the enemy width and height divided by 2 to use that as an offset. So that now it actually completely breaks. And I believe, once again, it's because I'm using width instead of client width. Or is it offset width? We've already figured this out and I already forgot. Oh, there is a client width, so let's just try client width and client height. Let's see if that works. There we go. Yeah, so client width, client height. So there we go. Now it's like actually centered on where our touch is. Of course, they're just staying where we let go. But as you can see, it's interactively and actually place them where we want. And it's pretty performant. There's no lag or anything like that. So now that we've gone that, we need to figure out when touch ends, when we let go of the emoji. So for that, let's go, we'll create another function called drop emoji. Or drop enemy. And just like here, we're going to want to add another event listener. But instead of touch move, this is going to be called touch end. We'll do a function called drop. So what do we want to do when we drop? I guess we want to get rid of the data grab and instead set data drop. And actually, we should probably do change this instead of is grab, say can move. Can move equals true. Let grab equal drop equal if grab equals yes or drop equals yes. I'll fix that. And can move equals false. There we go. So now before we animate and move them across, we first check to see whether it's either currently being grabbed or whether it's currently doing the fall animation. So now back up to drop. So we've removed grab and we've set drop. And we should also do the same here. we should remove the drop function here, or drop attribute. So now we've done that. So now we need to basically create a new movement animation just like we did here. So once again, we're going to want to find out the current position info. Except we actually don't need the left at all. Yeah, we don't actually need left. So let's just do let y. So we get the current y position. Speed should be a constant. Speed won't be based off of the emoji speed. Speed will be a constant. How fast do we want this emoji to drop? Let's make it a 3. Let's make it fast. So it'll drop fairly fast. So speed equals 3. Basically update it. This should actually probably be a constant. So we're getting that. This will be inside another interval. And once again, we'll do it every 10 milliseconds. Create a function called fall for the animation. So there we go. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out when to stop falling. And for that, we need to figure out where the ground is. So we actually had that in the spawn function, I think, right? Didn't we already have something like that? Where the hell is that spawn function? There we go. So this is how we figured out what the spawn was. I think I actually might cheat on one of my rules and hard code in a value for the bottom. Actually, this should be a constant as well. Constant. Actually, no, yeah, let's set ground as an actual constant up here. So yada, 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 emojis, documents. Didn't I have something else? Didn't I have like a... Here we go. So I guess we want it to stop at the castle bottom minus the emoji height. I'm just trying to think. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of like a good name to name the variable. I don't want it to be part of castle. I guess I'll just call it ground. I don't think I need to set it up as anything else. I'll just call it ground. That's all we need. So what is ground? So ground is bears dot ground equals just minus 20. So that's where the ground is. So we'll use this as our kind of constant to figure this out. Sorry that was a bit of a tangent, but yeah. So we're going to get the emoji height. We're going to go let ground equal minus h. And we're basically going to go as long as if y is less than ground, do this. Else, we'll just set it to the ground. And we'll clear the interval. Let's see if this works. Oops. There we go. And nothing's working. Everything's broken. Woo. This isn't working at all. I wonder why this isn't working. What did I break along the way? It must be that I think I screwed something up in the move. Oh. So here's what it is. So when I did the can move, I should have been if not can move. I think that was the issue. Yeah, that was the issue. Okay, so that's working, but the oh, right, I also I disabled the drop. I disabled that for testing. Well, I mean, it's working. I drop it and it goes down. So why isn't it like animating? So let's figure out what's going on here. So console.log y, console.log ground, and let's see what happens here in the console logs. So it's like just instantly setting to, why is it instantly setting to that? Oh, I see what it is. So consistency in your naming conventions is critical. Here I named it data X, data Y. Here I named it data top. So what is, so yeah, so it should be left and top. So that's the issue. So this needs to be left. That should be top. Ah, beauty. Look at that. Yeah, so another thing, you may have wondered why, if it's not this, I actually actively set it to be the ground. This is why. Because you can technically drop it below. So if you drop it below, then just go back to where you're actually supposed to be on the ground. So now, pretty much the last thing we need to do is, once we've cleared the interval, we need to actually send this element back to the travel function so that it continues on its journey. Let's test this. So if I pick him up and he falls down, and he didn't go. Oh, once again, another stupid. Why the hell did I try to pass travel as a parameter? Didn't quite work. Oh, another stupid mistake. I never set the attributes I need to clear these attributes out. Yay, we did it. See, I just look stupid. Although I don't know, like the way I have one of those stupidly long, like 32.9-inch ultra wide monitors that I love, but I'm basically using my tablet to VC in so I could take a look at OBS so that I know, like, I can take a look at it to make sure the camera is focused on the right part of the screen. The thing is, I keep looking at my tablet as if it's the camera, even though the camera is up here. So I apologize for that. That must be pretty off-putting to constantly see. But what can I say? I'm not a celebrity. I'm not used to recording videos, especially with this mug here and my horrible quarantine self-haircut. But we got a lot done here. I mean, this video has been going on for almost almost 2 hours. We've been going for about $1.45 here. I think we got a lot done for the first video. We got very basic design. We got a spawn function, time functions. We got animation functions to figure out when to start and stop. We got like touch functionality. We got the dropping animation, we got it to reconsider, we got all that to work. So I think we did a pretty good job here for the first video. For the next video, when I get around to that, we'll extend this to actually have enemies die. So we'll detect how far they've fallen, and if they've fallen far enough, we'll remove them. I might add in some new animations. I might do like have them rolling animation, something like that. We'll actually have more than one level. We'll actually allow different level spawning. With different difficulties. We'll actually have like a castle HP and an end screen. We'll do all that kind of big. We might even get into different emoji types, like giant emojis and flying emojis and stuff like that, you know, and we can have a lot of fun with it. And so that'll be the next video. Once that's done, I think the video after that will be about actually packaging it as a PWA and as an APK, so it can be like so it's not just a website, it's like an actual something you can install as like a native app on your phone. It 100% works for Android, and I'm pretty sure that Apple has finally come over and started to allow PWAs to be installable on iOS as well. So it should work on an iPhone as well. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for the next one, and yeah, stay safe.